future, you may be forced to marry someone, whether you like them or not. I know that sounds far-fetched, but welcome back to our channel. We are not dating coaches. This is simply a place for men to recognize warning signs and or recover from injuries in the dating, mating, and marriage game. Men, you're going to be forced to marry someone, whether you like them or not. I know that this sounds far-fetched, but here's a story out of Tanzania. It's on CNN, so it must be true, right? Tanzanian governor wants to create a national database for married men in a bid to curb infidelity. That is the title of the article. Now, on the surface, I don't think you would see much wrong with this. I think that most men and women will agree that infidelity is wrong. If you decide to get into a marriage contract with someone, you should fulfill your obligation within that contract. I think men and women can both agree. But what struck me as interesting is when I dug into the story a little bit more. So let's look at some things that I've highlighted. Apparently, the governor of Tanzania plans to create and publish a database of married men to protect women from heartbreaks. Okay, now that in and of itself sounds odd, but let's dig a little further. Paul Makonda, not to be confused with Wakanda, said that he received a lot of complaints from women who were abandoned by their lovers after a marriage proposal, and that the planned database will help combat infidelity. Now, he also went on to say, I have been receiving complaints from women who have been promised marriage by men, yet the men didn't fulfill that promise. Now, let me just say one thing here. I thought it was supposed to be a database of married men. Now we're just saying women who have been proposed to. But sometimes you really want to check your sources to make sure you know what you're talking about. So I reached out to see if I could find the article somewhere else. I found it on the BBC and I also found it on The Independent. Now on The Independent it said, city considering publishing names of all married men to protect single women. That was the title of the article. But much like the CNN article, when you dug down deeper, it became strange. It says here, city is considering publishing the identities of all married men there in a bid to protect single women from unnecessary heartbreak. Okay, so now we want our government to help manage our emotions and keep us from heartbreak. Alright. Mr. Makonda also said that he'd received complaints from women who were promised marriage by men who failed to follow up on the proposal. And let's go down a little bit further. He's also quoted as saying, these charming men have been promised to marry them, then ditch the women after using them. This is something that is humiliating. Alright, there's the story. Now let's talk about the consequences for men and why you should be concerned. Men are going to be forced to marry. The first reason you should be concerned is that her feelings are not fair. You see, it appears as though in these situations, what happened was that men went out on a few dates with some women. They may have even dated for a month. They may have even dated for years. But at some point, the men decided that the women were not marriage material, and they decided to walk away. Now, where I'm from, that's just called dating. You know, similar to the way that women have foodie calls. You know what a foodie call is. That's when you get wined and dined, you have lobster and steak and escargot, and you go on concerts and trips, and then all of a sudden, when you're done using these men up for their financial resources, poof, you're gone. You ghost them, never to speak to them again. Or, it's similar to the way in most states when you buy a car, if you keep it for a certain amount of time and it does not behave as it's supposed to, you can return it under the lemon law. So you buy a car and it breaks down within a specified amount of time. In most states, you can take that car back. You see, what's happening here It's just something called life. In life, people change their minds all the time, but what you don't see from men is them going to government officials and forcing people to do their bidding. Which brings me to my next point: the government is her gang. And much like real street gangs, they will beat you, degrade you, take everything you have, and leave you destitute. Let's just give an example. Say if you're a man and you're dating a woman and you guys decide that you want to get married because you're in love and you're going to spend the rest of your life together. You go down to the courthouse and you sign a contract with the state and you say, I love you, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. Well, over 70% of the time, women renege on that contract and they actually file for divorce. So women break this marital contract over 70% of the time. So seeing this, men have opted out of marriage, which is what most of these men have done in this article. If we're talking about men who have simply proposed to women and then decided not to go through with the marriage, this is similar to a foodie call or it's similar to a lemon law. You decided not to get into a contract because you saw some red flags. Now, instead of women just simply A, opting out, or B, changing the attitudes and behaviors so that the marriages can work, what they've decided to do is force men to marry them. Again, for the most part here, what we're talking about is instances where men have dated women and the women didn't conceal their crazy long enough to get married and the men opted out. If we're talking about a database for married men, I'm fine with that. But for men who have proposed to women, that's a little extreme. So now, gentlemen, let's think about this. First, you may be forced to marry a woman that you don't like. If that happens to you, number one, her feelings are not fair. You should always remember that. The way she feels today may not be the way she feels tomorrow. Number two, the government is her gang. The government will come in, swoop in, take all of your resources and reallocate them to her in whatever way that they see fit, oftentimes for the rest of her life. The third thing I want you to remember is know the odds before you take the gamble. There's nothing wrong with doing a little bit of research and being adequately armed before you decide to say, I do or I don't. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. If you like this content, please drop a like, subscribe, and we'll have more content coming soon. Thank you.